All right, this is section 2 of week 9, and we're going to talk about agreements. So the difference in the terminology that I'm using, the contracts again are between you and an outside party. Agreements, we're going to talk about partnerships. So this is anything within your own company. So this is going to be an operating agreement, an ownership agreement, investments. There could be numerous other types of agreements. So we're going to walk through some of the really high level kind of thoughts on this, and then dive deep into a couple of different areas. The first thing that I want to stress is that you do not want to get one of these off the internet to save a couple of dollars. If you listen to our podcast that's attached to this with Rocco Koza of Koza Law in Pittsburgh, he'll give you a really good example of why you don't want to pull something like this off the internet to save some money up front. Spend the money up front to do it right the first time, and you're going to save yourself a lot of headache later, because just like a lot of marriages in this country, a lot of partnerships end in divorce. So, you want to make sure you're covered. In any business relationship, you're going to want to have at least a minimum of an operating agreement and an ownership agreement, and that really depends upon the situation. Your operating agreement is simply that. It just defines who does what within the business, who has managerial control, who can make decisions, all that type of stuff. It can get really complicated, but it can also be pretty simple. It really depends upon the situation that you have set up with your partners, investors, etc. The ownership agreement is going to be a little more complicated. Well, it can be more complicated. It could be simple as well. But it defines who owns the company, and and this is equity. This is anybody who has a lien on the company, that type of stuff. So most financial decisions are going to have to go through that ownership agreement for the most part. Again, that depends on the combination of the ownership and the operating agreement. But it can get very complicated based upon who does what, who has responsibility, who's got skin in the game, etc. One tip that I have for anybody out there, especially if you're going to be the majority owner, so let's say you're bringing the majority of the money to the table, make sure you have a solid buy-sell agreement with your partners. So if let's say you own 70% of the company and your partner owns 30%, and you don't have that buy-sell agreement in there, and they up and decide that they want to move to, Hawaii and just surf full time, they still own 30% of your company, even if they're not doing their job. And if you don't have that buy-sell agreement in there, you can, but it gets really complicated to fire them as a partner. But if you have that buy-sell agreement in there, all you have to do is just say, okay, as a majority owner, I own 70%. Here's 30%, fair market value of the business. Here's your money. Beat it. You now own, 100% of the company. The operating and ownership agreements, a lot of times they're kind of wrapped up into the same agreement, just to make it easy. So again, that could be all under the same umbrella there. The last agreement we're going to cover is going to be an investment agreement. So this is like something that it's similar to something that you'd get from a bank if you're receiving a loan, but unlike most bank loans, these can get creative in structure. So for a bank, it's going to be, here's X number of dollars, you have 5 years to pay it back, and they have a lien on your business until it's paid back. But if you get like an investor, you can get as creative as you want in terms of how that works. So they own a certain percentage, and they're not allowed to say anything about your business. They own a certain percentage, but they have certain duties, whether that's like to act as an advisor when you need it, whatever it is. And you're going to want to have an investment agreement, even if it's just like that rich uncle who's going to loan you the money, or a legitimate investor who's like angel investor. You're going to want to have that investment agreement, because especially when you're borrowing money from people, not from a bank, it gets way more personal. So you want to make sure that, you can avoid those awkward holiday dinners if you have that investment agreement, and if you make good on your repayments of that investment. Agreements overall are just very important because, like I said, kind of towards the beginning, that a lot of business partnerships often start off as best friends doing something together and then end up as bitter enemies towards the end. So Make sure that you have an agreement, even if it is with your best friend, and make sure you get them signed, and keep a copy for yourself. Because this is something that a lot of people, they have one and they're like, oh, like, this is cool. We get it signed and, stuff in the back of a filing cabinet or something, never look at it again. But you want to make sure that you have those on the ready just in case. You're going to need both the ownership and the operating agreement if you decide to bring on an investor, another partner, get a bank loan, or pretty much do anything else that requires money in your business. That doesn't mean that you, as the majority owner, have to get permission to do anything unless it's somewhere in the agreement. But the investor, bank, potential partner, whoever it is, they're going to want to know who they're getting in bed with. So if an investor approaches your company and they want to give you money, they want to know who else you already owe money to. So this is something that you just want to make sure that you have, because they don't want to, find out that you're over leveraged or whatever. And banks are definitely going to require that if you approach them for a loan. And that's about it for contracts agreements. Again, I am not a legal professional. Seek professional legal help if you have any questions. These are just some things that you should think about as you, start up your business, bring on investors, partners, that type of stuff. It can get really complicated, but just, again, I'm going to iterate that the upfront investment is totally worth it, so that you don't have to pay for it on the back end if things go south.